Hello, Comeback Game Nation. Barry William Magledy here, back with another episode of the Comeback Game podcast. And today's episode is a little bit different. We speak to Gabriela Rosa from Natural Fertility Breakthrough. Gabriela has been in the fertility industry for almost 20 years now and helps people to conceive naturally, whether they've had or experienced different IVF treatments and things before. They've got a 98.15% success rate of helping their clients to conceive babies. We dive deep into understanding a bit more about her journey, how she went from finishing a study straight into her own business, how she's built that business over the last 19 years, and understand a little bit more around what actually creates these challenges in fertility and how it's not necessarily lack of sperm count or hormonal imbalances with women. And me being me, I absolutely relate it back to business and how you can use it to grow a business. So if you're up for the interview, please continue on. I'm sure you get a lot of gold out of this one. Let's head over there now and start our conversation with Gabriela. Gabriela Rosa from Natural Fertility Breakthrough. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Barry. Lovely to have, this wonderful opportunity to talk to you and your audience.
Yeah, you too. Look, we've already been speaking about nipples and pregnant women and all sorts of stuff before the recording even started. So
we cover all things.
I'm excited to see where we go. So look, let's just, for anyone who doesn't know about you or about the amazing business you guys have, do you want to just give a bit of intro around who you are and what it is you guys do?
Sure. So I'm a fertility specialist. I'm also a Harvard University awarded scholar. And for the last 2 decades, I've been helping couples overcome infertility and miscarriage in all sorts of situations, typically when everything else has failed. So it's pretty much fair to say that, and actually last year we did a retrospective analysis of our patient cases, and we have a 78.15% live birth rate for our patients. So that's kind of, the game we play, so to speak. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to just, help create lives and families. So that's us.
Fantastic. And so this is not IVF then?
No, it's not IVF. So we work with couples who do need to go through IVF, but often our patients don't need IVF. So we work on everything around and about reproductive function and reproductive health. So helping couples be the very best version of themselves in terms of their health and their biochemistry, drilling deeper into some of the areas that could be getting in the way, in order to have a baby. And then of course, because of the majority of our patients, they typically have been trying for more than 2 years, or they've had multiple miscarriages. They're not your usual kind of case where people have been trying for 5 minutes and it hasn't worked. It's kind of like people who have done multiple failed IVF cycles or have done lots of different types of treatments that haven't actually worked out. So it's not IVF, although we do work with couples going through IVF from time to time.
Yeah. So how did this come about? Like, was it a passion from a young age? Like, how did you end up here?
Yeah, it's a funny question because I remember, we all have those moments where we have no idea what we're going to do with our lives, right? And I had that very moment, and I was like, what am I going to do, with my life? And, one day I basically decided that nutrition was something I was interested in. And also there were two things actually in that moment. There was nutrition and there was interior design. So, those very distinct choices to be made. And I remember my mom kind of saying, I'm not sure about interior design, but I'm also not sure about nutrition. I'm like, well, clearly, it's my choice. It's the kind of life that I want to live here. Right. So I decided that I had more interest in understanding how the body worked and, how to nourish myself and all of those things. So what ended up happening was that I decided to enroll after I finished, high school. I decided to enroll in a nutrition course, and I started in the first kind of term that I was into this course. I was like, yeah, but that's not really going to work so well, because typically, you tell people what to eat and they do the exact opposite of what it is that you're asking them to do. And so I decided that, okay, that might be something, but I need some extra tools and strategies to be able to really kind of help people on a different level, at least so I thought. And at the college that I was starting, so my initial training is actually as a naturopath. It turned out that they had this thing called naturopathy. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. What is that? I had no idea what it was. And because I was born and raised in Brazil, you see. So my parents immigrated to Australia when I was about 13. And I spent 2 years of my schooling life in Australia. Then I went to Germany as an exchange student for a year. And then my parents decided to go back to Brazil. So I went back to Brazil. So my schooling was kind of all over the place. And what was interesting about that is that when I turned 18, I was like, okay, I really want to be in Australia. That's the place that, for me feels like home. So when I came over on my own at 18, I was like, okay, I've got to do something, decided to start studying. That was the whole, type situation that went on at the time. And I had no idea what naturopathy was. That was never something that I had heard of in Brazil. Yeah. It wasn't even a profession that was available there. And so I made a couple of inquiries, asked about what it was. And they said, okay, well, you study these things called herbal medicine and nutritional supplementation. And, we might do massage therapy and homeopathy. And I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of different. And that's essentially how it happened. So after I spent 3-4 years actually studying. The last year of my degree, I basically was going up the stairs, kind of trying to figure out, okay, but I really want to specialize on something because at the time, lots of student loans, making sure that I could live my life. I was kind of thinking, okay, well, people who specialize in things earn more. Therefore, I need to specialize in something, And I remember really being kind of like, okay, well, but what is it? Because I had no idea. And as I'm going up the stairs one day to get into clinic, because we had to do like all these clinic hours to be able to graduate, I see this little poster, A4, something, natural fertility. I'm like, yep, that's it, fertility. That's what I'm going to specialize in. So, at the age of 20, what do you know? Sounds great. It was at about 21 or something. And I just decided that was it. And from that day onwards, I started to study specific things that were related to fertility. I did a couple of specialization courses before actually graduating. Graduated, started practicing and started seeing patients in that arena from the very beginning. And it was something that developed from there.
Mm. And in a way, you've managed to blend like interior decorating with naturopathy anyway. It's just not typically like furnishing a house, right? It's interior decorating with one's. And so you've been in business for 21 years, I think you said just before. Has that always been in this field, or was there some other ventures?
No, this is actually, I graduated in 2001. So 2001 basically was when I graduated and started my own business. And so it was always in this business. So I have never actually done anything else with my life. I have everything that I've learned in life has been learned. I actually often say, my husband, he is a chartered accountant, business owner. He runs a huge business, 100 people in his own business. And what's interesting is that I always say to him, business has been my hugest personal development because imagine at age 21, when I basically decided that I was going to do this thing, 22, starting my own business and then going, okay, well, this is interesting. How am I going to, make this happen? And I had no idea, well, I thought I had an idea. I certainly had an idea about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to create. But between that and the practicality and the practical aspects of running a business day to day, finding patients, taking care of them, the organization that happens in the background of that, and all of the things, I had to learn all of that in practice, doing the thing. And so what was fascinating is that I was very lucky in the beginning of my career because I was working at the time with an obstetrician gynecologist. When I was studying, I was actually his receptionist, and he was an incredible guide for me on my journey. And I remember one time asking him, I wanted to specialize in something, that whole conversation, and didn't really know exactly what. And I said to him, James, I'm thinking of specializing in pediatrics. And he turns around, like literally, he's obstetrician gynecologist, right? So he turns around and goes, that is the worst idea I've ever heard. I'm like, what? And what was interesting was that I said, okay, thank you for your feedback. And I said, but why? Why do you say that? And he goes, well, first of all, your patient's not your patient. Your patient cannot tell you what's wrong. And your patient is the parent of your patient. It's a terrible idea. I was going to do pediatrics when I was in university, and I decided that it wasn't a good idea. I'm like, okay, I got it. It's not a good idea. So it was interesting, you know, to get that kind of feedback, but it really also guided me because I worked with him for a very long time while still building my business, you know, after I graduated, and seeing the running of a clinical practice was very helpful. And obviously being a part of that was also really helpful. But it all happened, you know, as a result of kind of having that experience. I then got a job back then it was very difficult to get an actual job. So I was a contractor. So I had my own business within a medical practice. And and so it was still my responsibility, you know, to find patients, to see patients. But it turned out after about 1 or 2 years in that clinic that the main doctor, who used to be very, very busy, he specialized in cancer treatment, he needed someone to guide his patients in nutrition. So I was doing my little thing in fertility on the side, and he needed someone to just, you know, support that whole dietary advice side of his practice. And the nutritionist that had been in the clinic had left. So it was like me, you know, and it was great. So it was a great opportunity. I was seeing immediately 20, 30 patients a day. And that gave me a lot of clinical experience, you know, a lot of clinical understanding about what needed to happen, how to treat patients, how to put things in ways that people understood and were engaged by. Because as you know, whenever anybody tells you to do anything, most people just go, I'll do whatever I want. When it comes to diet, it's even more challenging because people want to hang on to the things that essentially they know and they like and that are convenient and easy. So you can imagine that as a result of being in that type of field, you have to develop some behavioral flexibility at the very least, you know, to be able to understand what it is that people need, their wants, their desires, their ability to comprehend what it is that you're saying. But then again, you know, the biggest part of that is actually understanding that, you know, true communication is the response you get, not what it is that you're saying, because people will tell you anything to get off the hook. And if you're not actually helping them to understand what it is that they're doing and why, what ends up happening is that they will tell you that they will do it. They'll come back a month later. If they come back, because they often are going to be too embarrassed and they're going to go, you know what, haven't done any of the things that she said, I won't be back. And so they don't get a result, you don't get a result. It becomes a really frustrating experience for everyone involved. And ultimately, no one wins from that. So that was a lesson that I had to learn very, very quickly, that, you know, I was as good as my last consultation with that person, and my ability to enroll and engage and inspire them into doing something for their own reasons, not my reason, not because I wanted them to change their diet, but because, you know, that was something that they wanted to do that was going to benefit them, and helping them see that. And I think that every aspect of business, you know, it requires that level of behavioral flexibility, because otherwise what ends up happening is that you want to sell someone something, they don't want it because they can't see the value. And then all of a sudden, nobody wins because, one, you're not getting your message across, you're not getting your point out there, you're certainly not helping and serving them. And as a result, you're not making any money. So, you know, I think that that idea of true communication is the response you get. Sometimes we have to look at it. What is the evidence? You know, how far am I getting with this? By looking at what is the response that I'm getting, and how do I adjust my own communication behavior, whatever it is that I need to do in order to get a different response.
So over the thank you so much for sharing that. Over the last 19 years, you would have seen a lot of patients throughout this field. Like, what do you think are some of the common reasons that these people don't conceive children? You know, like if IVF is not always the way, and I know a lot of people that have been through IVF and still haven't been successful. What do you think are some of the reasons, some of the common reasons, or, you know, patternings preventing people from falling pregnant?
It's a great question. And actually, there's a very specific reason. Sometimes people talk about this whole idea of unexplained infertility. There's no such thing as unexplained infertility. There's only a situation where nobody has taken the time to correlate all of the factors that are actually explaining from a biochemical perspective why this is not happening. Now, there's some really interesting epidemiological research from around the world that shows us that there are factors that get in the way, and often they're minor. You know, let's say, for example, that we've got a male that has a lower than average sperm count, or a woman who has hormonal imbalance evidenced by, you know, blood tests, or she has irregular cycles, or the man has a morphology issue in terms of his sperm. What ends up happening is that all of those minor factors compound each other's effect. So the research shows us, in terms of practical guidance and numbers, that you just add one minor factor to the equation of a couple trying to conceive, and a couple at peak fertility has an average of 3 months time to pregnancy. So literally, it's have sex, get pregnant, have a baby, done. We're no longer having this conversation. But when that hasn't happened, then we need to start asking, okay, what are some of the obstacles that could be getting in the way here? And as a result of that, we then start looking at these minor factors that I'm talking about. What we know is that you add one minor factor to the equation, and all of a sudden we go from an average of 3 months time to pregnancy to an average of 2 years. So there's a huge compounding effect. You add a second minor factor to the equation, we go from 2 to 7 years, and a third gives us an average of 40 years time to pregnancy. No one has 40 years to get pregnant. So what ends up happening is that a lot of couples go around in circles for a really long time, and eventually, unfortunately, run out of time altogether because those factors that are getting in the way, and, you know, are often easy to understand and easy to find if you take the time to assess the case, are just not being addressed. So, you know, it's really interesting to kind of figure out, you know, why are people having more difficulty conceiving these days? Well, because there are so many more minor factors that are getting in the way.
It's interesting. My mind can't help but just relate everything back to business. It's just part of how I'm wired. But I see this too. Like there's a tool or a methodology that we teach our clients called the profit approach. And it's a very similar thing to what you're speaking about. Like it looks at 5 somewhat minor factors in the business that create exponential growth. And when you look at the ability of making just the smallest tweak across those 5 key areas, or in the one key area that's having the biggest hole in the bucket per se, the results within the business is exponential. I can really relate that to what you're sharing back is that, you know, often I've been with friends who've been fixated on the fact that they might have a low sperm count or something like that. But the reality is there's all these other lifestyle choices that aren't being made to best support them in their, you know, journey to facilitate or to get pregnant and have a child. So I can really kind of understand that. If we just turn the dial for a second back into business, like 19 years in business, you've no doubt been through a lot. You know, what have been some of the key things that you've learned about yourself, you know, in that process?
Look, I think that it's fair to say, and this is what I was saying before, you know, this has been the biggest personal development journey of my life. I think it's very, very, very fair to say that every single thing I know about myself is actually as a result of my business, because I am incredibly driven. If you haven't noticed that piece. And so what ends up happening is that I demand a lot from myself and I want to see results. You know, I often talk about the fact that, you know, to my patients, like, I care very little about being liked. Of course, I prefer that you like me, but I don't care about being liked as much as I care about results. So just get on with it and do the thing, you know, and that's how essentially we ended up with the 78.15% success rate in our program, because we've figured out, you know, what works and what doesn't. Now, in terms of the biggest things that I've learned about myself, I've learned that I'm incredibly impatient. You know, that is the one thing. And I've also had to learn that it doesn't matter how impatient I am, I just need to get on with it. And, you know, that every little bit counts, that every little bit, every single time that you show up, even if you don't want to, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, you know, makes a dramatic difference, not only to the people that I get to serve, but to my team, which then makes a greater difference to the people that I also want to serve. But just in general, you know, I had a meeting with my team today, And what was really interesting was that I was relaying and talking about some of the way in which I had been feeling prior to having looked at things from a different perspective. You know, like I think that sometimes in business we forget that the way we see the world is actually not how the world is. You know, just because we're having a difficult experience or a challenging experience, that again, that whole conversation around changing, shifting, even slightly, you know, from the place that you are, instead of looking at something straight on, just looking at slightly to the side and kind of trying to see a different perspective on the issue and what is the benefit of that challenge and how is this benefiting me now. That those have been some huge lessons for me over the last 20 years. You know, sometimes I used to be very black and white in terms of this is good or bad, or, you know, if this is not going my way, it's a bad result, or if, you know, and I've learned to see and I've learned to understand that things in business will never go my way. They will either go better than what I think, or they will be worse than what I think. And I have to adjust myself as a result of that. But I think that, you know, the biggest thing for me has really been understanding that it's about service more than anything else. And it's not service from a subservient perspective, but the difference that I can actually get to make in the world by just who I am, my personality, the way that I show up, the way that I decide to inspire myself to move forward with the things that I want to do. Because the one thing that I hear the most from my patients and from my community is, oh my God, you're so inspiring. It's like, I don't wake up in the morning trying to be inspiring. Like I wake up in the morning trying to just get through my day. But what happens is that I don't let myself off the hook, right? I go, okay, this is how I'm actually going to do this thing for the best and the benefit of all concerned so that we can all win. Therefore, Gabriella, get over yourself, get on with it, and just do your very best. And I get very passionate about that because I know that when I show up in that way, people respond. So again, it's about response. You know, it's about kind of what is it that I'm adding to the equation? What is it that I'm putting in? How am I bringing, you know, a perspective or a piece of value or some, you know, new understanding to the audience in a way that is actually going to benefit them? That's service, as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting point of view. And I guess coming back to what you're sharing before too, like our perception has the ability to create the experience we have in life. You know, multiple people can read the same book, experience the same situation, watch the same car crash, and all have a different point of view around what that means. And it's an important point that you raised that, you know, we have the ability to create meaning. You know, we're meaning making machines in a meaningless world, and nothing has meaning other than the meaning we apply to that. And, you know, you've only got to look at people that walk around with a shitty perspective on life to not to look too far why they've got why they report having a shitty life. It's not through the fact that they've been dealt shitty situations, but their perspective on that. And don't get me wrong, like people are dealt shitty situations, but look at half the people that have made it big. They've all got a triumph, you know, to a tribulation to triumph story where they've been through massive adversity. They've learnt to overcome that, and that's allowed them to become who they are today. Because of the meaning they've applied to that story, rather than allowing that story to become their story, full stop. It's like that's a chapter in their book of life.
Yeah. And I think, Barry, you know, that piece that you've just talked about, you know, the importance of not letting that be your story, full stop. Because we all know, I mean, it's become almost cliche, the idea that, you know, people who succeed are the ones that get up every time, right? No matter whether it's easy, whether it's hard, whether it feels like, you know, they don't want to, whatever it is. But ultimately, and I think that, you know, I remember when I was building my business in the early days, I think probably about 7 to 10 years into it, I had a very, very difficult situation where I decided to start my own practice in my own kind of space. And I had no idea. I didn't have the skills, didn't have the knowledge. Obviously that didn't go so well. So it was a huge learning experience. But the thing that really kept me going, despite the challenges, despite the, you know, the losses and all of the cumulative challenging effect that had was this idea that I can only fail if I stop. I can only fail if I don't just keep going. And you know, my mum, my mum is the most amazing woman. She was a primary school teacher for almost 40 years, five-year-olds. And she has been my inspiration for so long because, you know, the whole time that she was raising us and going through everything, like her and my dad, but she took a primary carer role as well as working full-time as a primary school teacher. So you can imagine the amazing challenge that was. And, you know, doing everything herself, she didn't have a lot of help. So it was just really quite, you know, a stretched situation. But I remember when I had my first child, and I was saying to her, oh my God, I don't know that I can do this, and it's all too hard, and I think I might just pause my career for a while, pause my business, you know, all of that. She goes, Gabriella, yes, Mom. She goes, your children one day will grow up and they will leave, just like you did. And all you are going to have is what you create and what you build. Even if from this moment until you can walk again, you crawl, you keep going. You keep going. If it's crawling on your knees, on all fours, just keep crawling. Sure, it might not get you there as fast as you would like, but you know what? It certainly is going to beat you staying here where you are now.
Yeah, I love that. The only way to fail the race is by giving up. You know, every step gets you closer towards the finish line.
Even if you damn crawl.
Yeah. You know? I love that. And I guess, look, our time's flown today. For anyone out there who may be going through the fertility journey and having some challenges there, what's the best way they can find you and connect with the work that you guys do?
They can Google me, Gabriela Rosa, or they can, which is Gabriella with one L, R-O-S-A, or they can go to naturalfertilitybreakthrough.com.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today.
Such a pleasure, Barry. Lovely to talk to you. And I hope that, you know, it makes a difference to someone's life.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. If you're in a position that many of our clients were before joining us, which is that your business is controlling you rather than you controlling your business, we would love to have a chat to you to see whether or not we might be the right fit to partner with you to help you grow and succeed in business. And over the past 8 years, we've helped hundreds of business owners around the world to grow, scale, and succeed in business. Many of our clients report that we've helped them to triple their profits and double their time off in 12 months or less. If you jump onto YouTube and notice the hundreds of testimonies, you'd see that this is a common theme amongst them. If you're a business owner that's generating more than $300,000 a year in annual revenue, whether it's $500 million, $5 million, even $10 million a year, and you're looking to take your business and your life to the next level, we might be able to help. If you're noticing that your business is lacking structure, maybe systems or processes, maybe you're not quite attracting enough or the right type of quality leads, making enough sales, or maybe you're even having issues finding, hiring, retaining, and training the right team members, we could be a fit for you. Ultimately, we believe that we never have business problems, we have personal problems that are expressed through our business, and a lot of the work we do is with you as a business owner, helping you to constantly upgrade the way that you see life, the way that you make decisions, and the way that you help construct a profitable and purpose-driven business. In order for us to do that though, you need to book in a quick 15-minute application call with one of our scaling specialists here at the Game Changers. Through the 15-minute call, we're going to ask you a bunch of questions to see if or how we might better help you. If we can't help you, we'll let you know politely and do our best to point in the direction of someone that can. However, if we can help you, we'll look at booking you a 1-hour game plan session where we're going to dive a lot deeper into where you and your business are at right now, where it is that you want to go in the next 3, 5, and 10 years' time, and what are the potential roadblocks or challenges or even opportunities that are along the journey in order for you to get there faster. If you're really feeling that it's time for you to experience the love and the joy of running a business again, if you're really wanting to experience a business that does actually operate without you while still producing profit, we may very well be the right fit. So book in a 15-minute call, we can have a chat and see where we go from there. My name is Gabriella Rosa, and thanks for listening. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk soon.